when I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Joe Biden promised Ukraine $1 billion if they fired the prosecutor investigating his son's company.
If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
But when President Trump asks Ukraine to investigate corruption, the Democrats want to impeach him, and their media lapdogs fall in line. They lost the election. Now they want to steal this one. Don't let them.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
The message I'm getting from all this is apparently what we were supposed to have done was to ignore the Russian interference, ignore the Russian meddling and the threat that it poses to us. And oh, by the way, blown off what the then Commander-in-Chief, President Obama, told us to do, which was to assemble all the reporting that we could, that we had available to us, and put it in one report that the President could pass on to the Congress and to the next administration. And while we're at it, declassify as much as we possibly could to make it public, and that's what we did. It's kind of disconcerting now to be investigated for having done our duty and done what we were told to do by the president.
It is not enough for America's future that some participate and others don't. We have been given an extraordinary blessing, and at this moment in time, our country needs us. And we need people like George Soros, who is fearless and willing to step up when it counts. So please join me in welcoming George Soros.
Hello, how are ya? Oops, just my camera there a little bit. How is everyone? I hope everybody's having a good night. It's a Tuesday. Finally came up with a final name for this. This is the beginning of Fight for the Republic, because we are all fighting for this republic, no matter who it is and who we are. And those who we need to fight against those who are trying to destroy it. And we must continue to fight regardless. So it just seemed like a very appropriate name. And if Facebook wants to say this is a copyright music, it is not. It is original music, and they go pound sand and then get stuffed. So this is official name, and it's going to be a little bit different. I'm still working on it. This is the third step, if you will. And there's a lot going on, but I'm not going to cover it all because there's just too much. I could be here all night. We have everything from, I'm not going to cover Chaz because that's what they want. Easily they could just shut down the power and it'll be over. Simple, they could use sonic weapons. It would be over. It's non-lethal, so don't let the libtards say that it is, because it's not. They also have what's known as microwave weapons, which only burns you a little bit, but it gets you enough hot. It cooks you just a little bit, enough to make your ass run. Like one of them chickens out of the ovens. So it's not lethal. But there's also, holy smokes, there's some more stuff that I can get covered maybe tomorrow. If I get a little more time. I'm surprised I even have time today, because I'm still doing a whole bunch of stuff. Snipers? Well, don't really want to do snipers. It's kind of it's a little extreme. We want to do this peacefully. We want to do it without anybody getting hurt. It is the best way to do it. And they all need to go to prison. I think that works just as well, because personally, I'm fed up with these mothers. So what the deal is there's developing stories all over. I couldn't even get to half of it, and I'm even thinking about analyzing a little bit of another scope, but I haven't really decided. I may not, because due to time wise, I got to get all caught up. But there was Rosenstein's testimony, which basically he didn't know what the shit he was talking about, and he got caught by the Republicans. I've been hearing a lot that the Republicans were too easy on him. Well, a lot of these people are attorneys anyway before they went into the political arena. So what my analysis of it basically is, they softened him up, praised him a little bit. It's kind of like good cop, bad cop. And they did go after him. Later on, you had Cruz, you had Jordan. They all went after him. So it was a very, very good one. It wasn't a softball, because they're not going to do that crap. There's, besides what I'm going to show you, there's another analyst about the Flynn case, which are a little bit of new developments. They had oral arguments last Friday, which they took down already. Obviously, it didn't go to YouTube's liking. So, what can you do? I was going to play it for you in case you missed it, because I don't think a lot of people actually heard it. And it was streamed, live audio. So, what I'm going to get to right now, brand new developments. Something's going on with North Korea, and I'm not sure yet. North Korea is getting close to the DMZ, and that's all that I can find reported at this time. But let me... Nope, not that. Let me shrink that box for you. There we go. I kind of like this better. It's easier to talk to you instead of if I needed to, and makes things a little bit easier. So here's Lou.
Meeting between Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and a senior member of the Chinese Communist Party to be held at Hickam Air Force Base in Honolulu, Hawaii. This mystery meeting, ostensibly sought by the Chinese, comes after months of an aggressive Chinese Communist disinformation campaign against the United States, after the Chinese government had unleashed the deadly China virus on an unsuspecting world, and resulting in the infection of more than 2 million Americans and the deaths of more than 100,000 more, and accompanied by months of denial and cover-up by the Chinese Communist government. As of this hour, neither the White House nor the State Department will reveal the agenda of those talks, nor exactly who is attending the meeting. This kind of secrecy is outside American government tradition. That is, transparency and forthrightness in U.S. foreign policy. The meeting is more in line with totalitarian states, like China, that don't recognize the right of the public to know what their government is doing. The Chinese government won't acknowledge that a meeting is even being held, let alone what is under discussion. But the meeting comes at a time of heightened hostility between the United States and China, brought on by Beijing's cover-up and their dispatch of the deadly China virus pandemic, their aggressive military posture in the South China Sea, their recent takeover of Hong Kong, and of course, that aggressive disinformation campaign against the United States. One of this country's leading China experts is Dr. Michael Pillsbury. He joins us here later this evening. We'll also be talking about the military implications. General Jack Keane joins us as well. And today, there's also been a major development in the fight against the China virus. Researchers in England now have evidence that a steroid called dexamethasone can reduce the risk of death by 35% among patients on ventilators. Hospitalized patients who don't need breathing machines also saw their chances of survival improve by 20%. That great news is coupled with a record almost 18% jump in retail sales in May, sending stock markets around the world higher. The Dow Jones Industrials today moving up more than 500 points. President Trump making those comments today at a White House Rose Garden event in which he signed a new executive order on police reform. The order bans chokeholds except for when a police officer's life is at risk by creating national standards for use of force. It calls for incorporating social workers into police forces and initiates information sharing about police officers with records of excessive use of force. President Trump insists bad cops are rare, but says those who are need to be rooted out.
They're very tiny. I use the word tiny. It's a very small percentage, but you have them. But nobody wants to get rid of them more than the overwhelming number of really good and great police officers.
Agreed.
Hey, folks, I'm Joe Biden. I'd like to ask you to join my campaign. As I said, time and
wrong button again. Hey, Nathan, what's up? So, that's a little bit of what happened today. I didn't get a chance to. I just seen this clip. I seen China, what was going on. So, I didn't watch that. But it doesn't matter. It had a lot of good information on it, and it's stuff that we needed to know. I didn't even know about that. That was real good. But we do have some more news on the Ukraine. New news. This was on the 30th that actually happened. I'm trying to get my buttons right. The Ukraine busts $6 million bribe scam from the gas company that hired Hunter Biden, and that would be Burisma. Once again, more criminal activity with Burisma. I wonder how that's going to. Some weed is legalized there, dude. I got to give you a hard time there, Osh. Ukraine officials seized $6 million in cash bribe, the largest in the nation's history. In a case linked to the founder of Burisma holding, the gas company has given Hunter Biden a seat on the board of trustees, which he had no experience. The bribery case has no connection to Vice President Biden's son, Ukraine investigators said Saturday in a press conference that revealed the scam. Well, that is definitely news, because usually where bribery goes, the Bidens follow, or Democrats. Millions of Americans, 100 American bills, they put on display, wrapping a rubber band and holding a close plastic bag, was indeed as a payoff to two top anti-corruption officials, according to Kyiv Post. 3 people, including the current and former tax official, has been detained. The suspects all 20 to 23% are very good odds to me. Yep. associates former ecology minister Mykoloa. Yeah, I know that's not right. I don't speak that good Russian. Zakharyatsky allegedly used the money as a bribe to stop the state probe of an embezzlement plot that has been driven Zalechkovsky into exile. Zalechkovsky, okay, I meant to say him, is a connery of the Ukraine scandal. Secret ex-president okay, that's the ex-president. I'm not going to say you more Russian names. And the founder of Burisma, which was at the center of the impeachment case against the President Donald Trump. Also, in an ongoing Senate probe into whether Hunter Biden profited off his father's foreign policy. Well, we all know he did. It's pretty obvious, and he's going to get caught because they are going to be giving out subpoenas, and I'm sure he's going to be one. And get your popcorn ready. It's going to be a great show. Yeah, might be hyped up on cocaine. Never know. In an odd move, Ginsburg calls potential or proposal to enlistment electrical college more theoretical than real. You would think, wait, all right, what's going on here? She's not moving. No, I'm not talking about Ginsburg. There we go. Okay. While speaking at the University of Chicago, the 86th liberal justice smacked down the idea from Socialist Representative Cortez to abolish the Electrical College. RBG said Americans should focus on change and realistic rather than going after something as radical as abolishing the system that used for hundreds of years to decide a winner of a presidential election of the United States. I have to say, I agree with that. Something she finally said that made sense. And that really is astounding because we have not heard much from her. And, you know, being a liberal, she's always leaned left, obviously. But I'm glad she kind of went more center. And she finally got a little bit of scruples back. I'm going to play a little Jay Sekulow because he has been involved, like really scoping this case with Michael Flynn, and he knows the ins and outs of this case. So here is Jay and his son.
Today on Jay Sekulow Live, exclusive analysis on the Mike Flynn
and we got
legal
volume.
saga by the ACLJ's expert legal team, including Jay Sekulow. You don't want to miss it today on the broadcast.
Live from Washington, D.C., Jay Sekulow Live.
We are here now to stop further impermissible intrusion into the sole power of the executive branch under the Take Care Clause to decide to dismiss a case and what circumstances warrant that dismissal. The government here provided an extensive and thoroughly documented motion to dismiss this prosecution.
Phone lines are open for your questions right now. Call 1-800-684-3110.
This is the quintessential case for mandamus because we have both issues of judicial usurpation of executive prerogatives and a clear abuse of discretion. The judge has no authority to do anything further in the case. There's no case or controversy any longer. The parties have decided, the government has quit, and he also has no authority to go into the reasons behind the executive's determination to dismiss the case.
And now, your host, Jordan Sekulow.
Welcome to Jay Sekulow Live. We are taking your phone calls, 1-800-684-3110, on what happens next if you've got questions about that in Mike Flynn's case. Now that it's been heard by the D.C. Court of Appeals and federal court, a 3-judge panel will go through who was on the panel. The oral argument was on Friday. We played a little bit of it on the show Friday just to give you kind of a sense, but we wanted to bring in our legal experts to analyze what happened on Friday and what is an extraordinary hearing on a writ of mandamus before the Court of Appeals and what could happen next. There's a few different options that could happen next in what is now we're calling kind of like the saga of Mike Flynn's trial that just will not come to a close. We are taking, again, your phone calls at 1-800-684-3110 and questions on Facebook and Periscope. If you're watching on Facebook and Periscope, I encourage you to share this with your friends and family now. Here's why. You will not get this kind of analysis anywhere else. You might get 5-10 minutes on cable news, maybe. You're not going to get a full hour analyzing this with top legal experts. So share this now if you're watching on Facebook and Periscope. And I want to go right to my dad, our chief counsel, Jay Sekulow. Dad, with just kind of your overview of what happened on Friday.
Well, before we get into the details of that very important oral argument, I want to address the Supreme Court issued a decision, a much anticipated decision this morning in a case involving whether sexual orientation constitutes a classification for discrimination laws to apply, specifically the Civil Rights Acts in 1964 involving employment and other matters. It's interesting because in a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court said that, in fact, sexual orientation does constitute a classification for anti-discrimination laws to apply. Some people were surprised at that, but the most surprising thing, I think, for a lot of people, I'm not particularly surprised at it. I expected the decision to go somewhat this way. But the decision was written by Justice Gorsuch, a conservative, which tells you that these issues don't cut necessarily on ideological lines. This was the application of a statute. He looked at the statute. He made a determination that sexual orientation would, in fact, be covered by the act. He was joined by Justice Roberts. That's why it was a 6. Then the liberal members of the court joined him. There was a dissent by Justice Alito, also by Justice Thomas and Justice Kavanaugh. Justice Alito's dissent saying this opinion of Justice Gorsuch read more like legislation than it did a legal analysis. But they do that with each other, so that's not that unusual. But I will say this, that for those that have been fighting on this issue of sexual orientation being covered under civil rights laws, this was a watershed case today. I mean, and I don't, no matter what side you are on the issue, I don't want you to ignore the fact that this was a big decision out of the Supreme Court. One that, again, I'm not surprised that it went that way. Looking at the statute, you could certainly, I always approach both cases if you're arguing at this for this side or for that side. And these are close cases, and this particular one was not so close, 6-3 decision. So that decision is now the law of the land. Which brings us now to General Flynn's case, and I'll take.
And also, I believe Kavanaugh voted in favor of this being a civil rights, legalizing it for civil rights, which, a lot of people argue this all the time. And that's just common sense. It really does. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it should absolutely not be a surprise. You can't fire someone over being gay, lesbian, whatever. You just can't. That's common sense.
What, in my view, it boils down to.
Let's do it in the next segment. We'll do it in the next segment. Yeah, here we go. 1-800-684-3110 with your questions. We'll be right back.
An appeals court will hear arguments on the potential future of the Michael Flynn case, despite the DOJ dropping the charges against the former national security advisor.
Sidney, I want to start with you, and I want to start with General Flynn. Because General Flynn, you have both sides. They said the case is over. Why do you now have to go to the D.C. Circuit? And what's wrong with Emmett Sullivan, his honor?
I wish I knew what was going on with Judge Sullivan. I can't say that I do, other than he has gone way out into left field by himself, as we say in our mandamus petition, on this notion that he can appoint an amicus for himself and solicit other amicus briefs and not rule on our motion, on the government's motion to dismiss, which we consented to.
When the prosecution decides to drop a case, it is not subject to judicial review. This judge wants to step off the bench, take off his robe, and act as a prosecutor, a clear violation of the separation of powers.
If Judge Sullivan had just
we'll have to discuss that
kept
later.
this motion waiting and languishing, it'd be one thing. He has set a hearing for mid-July. For all we know, by the end of July, he will have granted the motion.
To drag this out another 6 months, I mean, it won't just be a hearing on July 16th. It'll go beyond that. I think it's clear from the amicus position now that they want to take General Flynn to sentencing as soon as possible and impose upon him the maximum possible sentence. And to make us go through that process when the ultimate result has to be the grant of the motion to dismiss, the government's just wasting resources out the wazoo pursuing this. And the toll it's taking on the defendant is certainly irreparable harm.
This Judge Sullivan is damaging the judicial system in general. Nobody's ever done this, and they shouldn't. There's no reason for this judge, who was appointed, I believe, by Bush and has been served since, is absolutely refusing to sign off on this case. They're just trying to make up all kinds of different stories.
All right, so let's set the stage for everyone now on the Flynn case. And by the way, you know, that case involving that my dad was talking about with the Supreme Court, if what was not happening now in Atlanta and still across the country, dominating the news, this would be watershed moments where you'd see the reporters outside the U.S. Supreme Court analyzing this all day. And it might get some coverage in nightly news, national broadcast.
Surprisingly, it didn't. I didn't see anything. I've seen it on Twitter. And I was at somebody's house and they were watching Kelly Ripa. They talked about it. That's it.
But it'll get minutes instead of full coverage, and it just kind of tells you where we are as a country right now with what we're dealing with race issues and also with the pandemic itself. That being said, Mike Flynn, he still is dealing with his trial. And to get you up to speed with that, I mean, I think it's important, Dad, to just get people up to speed of how we even got to the Court of Appeals on Friday. We had the Department of Justice come in and say a motion to they wanted to drop the prosecution, and that the judge gets to rule on that. Instead of ruling on that and deciding if he wanted to accept that motion, Judge Sullivan decided he wanted to bring in an outside attorney, a former judge, to argue why Judge Flynn, Mike Flynn, is guilty. General Flynn is guilty. So to bring an outside kind of special prosecutor and to kind of continue the case rather than just rule on the motion from the Department of Justice, which he did not have to accept. He could have not accepted it and sentenced Flynn, and Flynn could have appealed that, but instead he tried to do this bizarre thing. He claimed inherent authority to bring in outside counsel. Then he got represented by his own attorney who went before, and it got a writ of mandamus filed from the Flynn team, got actually granted by the Court of Appeals. They heard that on Friday, and they dealt with, are going to be dealing with a whole host of those issues. The outside attorney being brought in to argue against Flynn, the decision by the judge not to just make a call. And it was not clear from the three judges, though, that exactly, they certainly didn't sound like they were ready just to go ahead and dismiss this for Mike Flynn, that they think that this should be handled at the district court level.
Yeah, I think that's right. But look, the ridiculous nature of where we are is you had the United States government come in and say, you know what, we shouldn't have prosecuted this case. We shouldn't have brought this case. We withheld exculpatory evidence. There was a bit of a frame up here. This case should not move forward. We join.
Just from withholding evidence should automatically dismiss this case.
General.
It's not a fair trial when the prosecution does this.
Flynn's motion to dismiss the case, end the case. And that should have been an order that Judge Sullivan signed in literally minutes, not months. But Andy, what happened here was this judge has got his own agenda, because there is a Supreme, I know we've got a call coming on this, we'll get to that in a moment, but the Supreme Court just a couple of weeks ago in a decision by Justice Ginsburg said, basically, hey, when the parties have decided where the case is going, it's not for the court to keep it going, but that's exactly what's happening here.
Well, that's exactly correct, Jay. Judge Sullivan has decided to become both the prosecutor and the judge at the same time. He has appointed a former federal judge as his amicus curiae, which means friend of the court, to argue against the decision of the Justice Department to dismiss.
See, this is what's really great about his show, is he will any legal names and explain what it is, because us common people don't know what any of that means.
Is the case to argue against the defendant's desire to have the case vacated, and he has got some agenda. I don't know what it is, but we're going to probably know on July 16th, because in my opinion, it's going back to the district court, and the writ of mandamus is not going to issue, and they're probably going to let Judge Sullivan make a ruling one way or the other on whether to accept the government's motion to vacate, concurred in by the defense or not, and then I predict we're going to be back in the D.C. Circuit again, Jay.
You're probably right. It may end up, end up in the U.S. Supreme Court. Although once there is a decision, to be clear here, once there is a decision by the district court, then the only issue before the Court of Appeals is, did Judge Sullivan have that inherent authority that he calls it to keep the case going or to sentence General Flynn once the parties agree the case should not move forward? And I think the D.C. Circuit's going to say no to that. But that's in a, Jordan, that's in a different posture than what the case is in now. I will say this, Sidney Powell did a fantastic job. Jeff Wall, the Deputy Solicitor General of the United States, did a very excellent job as well, very well done. The case was well presented. I thought that Judge Sullivan's lawyer was not particularly that effective, but just think about what I just said. Judge Sullivan's lawyer. That's how bizarre this case has become.
Yeah, and what's interesting also is that, and there's many ways, and we can talk about this throughout the show, that the Court of Appeals could come down and they could say, listen, this goes back to Judge Sullivan, but he can't have an outside, he can't bring in an outside prosecutor, or we're going to let him kind of do what he wants to do and see where it goes. But, I think what's tough there is that the damage this does to Mike Flynn and the continuation of being under this kind of the legal issues and being in court, not being able to move on with your life, even when the Department of Justice said we were wrong to even prosecute you. Take a listen to Sidney Powell, bite number 9.
If Judge Sullivan had denied the motion to dismiss on this record, we would be entitled to mandamus right now. To drag this out another 6 months, I mean, it won't just be a hearing on July 16th. It'll go beyond that. I think it's clear from the amicus position now that they want to take General Flynn to sentencing as soon as possible and impose upon him the maximum possible sentence. And to make us go through that process when the ultimate result has to be the grant of the motion to dismiss, the government's just wasting resources out the wazoo pursuing this.
Let me go right to the phones. Let me go to Donald in Virginia on line 1. Donald, welcome to JSECU Live. You're on the air.
Morning. You pretty much answered my question with that previous case that the Supreme Court ruled against, I think it was the Ninth Circuit Court. So now my question becomes, given that is the case, and there's already a separation of powers in the Constitution, clearly defining who has what authority, why are we going through all this? Why can't they go straight back to the Supreme Court and have it settled once and for all?
Yeah, you can't go straight to the Supreme Court.
Davis says in D Live, just think of how many common folk have been prison for this shit. Yeah, you're probably right. There's probably been a lot. But that the president signed that executive order, so it may release some of those type of offenders from the, First Step executive order.
Court, but it raises a really important issue, and you raised the separation of powers issues. So what Judge Flynn's lawyer did was rely on a statute in the federal rules of.
But how many judges do this? Hardly. This is the first time I've ever heard of anything so outrageous as this. This judge should be writing this off. There's absolutely no reason. I don't know if he's hateful. I don't know if he has an agenda. It's really hard to tell, and I hope somebody gets to the bottom of this. And if he's like, let's go out on a limb, let's taking a bribe, whatever. I'm not saying he is, but you don't know. I don't know this judge. I don't know his background too much. I've only researched a little. He did do the hearings on the IRS. Remember that scandal? So, same judge. But he didn't do anything like this.
Criminal procedure about what judges do on motions. But the federal rules of criminal procedure cannot, Andy, supersede the United States Constitution. And the separation of powers is embedded in the Constitution. That's why we have Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. So the federal rule of criminal procedure applied in this particular way, I think it's Rule 48, violates the separation of powers.
It does, and it is Rule 48, and it says that the government on its motion before sentencing can dismiss a case. The problem is that it has a little clause in there, Jay, and it says with the approval of the court. And Judge Sullivan has fastened upon that little clause to make himself not just the judge, but the prosecutor in the case, and called in a special counsel. Gleason is a special counsel. You might call him amicus curiae, who wrote a terribly intemperate brief, was even called that by one of the judges of the Court of Appeals in the oral argument, and then got his own lawyer, Beth Wilkinson, to argue on his behalf. So who are the litigants here? You got the government, you got Flynn, you got Gleason, you got Wilkinson, you got Sullivan. I mean, it's crazy.
I have never seen anything like this.
No.
Been practicing, Andy and I collectively have been practicing law 90 years. I have never seen anything like this.
And we're not supposed to see anything like this. I mean, I'm going to quote Justice Ginsburg in that 9-0 Supreme Court decision in May. She said, quote, "Courts are essentially passive instruments of governments. They do not or should not sally forth each day looking for wrongs to right. They wait for cases to come to them, and when cases arise, courts normally decide only questions presented by the parties." And in a nutshell, this concept dictates that judges decide the case as presented by the parties before them, not to go out questing for dragons to slay or issues to tackle that the parties have not brought before them. I mean,
wow, that's a stunner.
There it is. And yet, Judge Sullivan completely ignoring this very current 9-0.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court unanimously agreeing that judges should not go outside their role of what's being presented before them. And what's being presented before Judge Sullivan is a motion by the Department of Justice to dismiss the charges because of wrongdoing by the Department of Justice, that there was no legitimate investigation, and that motion could then be, that would be before Judge Sullivan. He could decide whether to accept it or not, and the case could then move on out of the district court. He decided to do exactly what Justice Ginsburg said courts should not do. He's not taking a passive role, Dad. He's taking the most active role you can.
Look, he's become a litigant. Let's be realistic here. He's become a litigant, and this comes on the heels of subpoenas being issued. Let's go quickly to Than. I mean, like 20 seconds here, Than. Subpoenas are now issuing from the Senate on this very matter and others.
Yeah, going to be an Article 1 play here as well, Jay, as they look at this dispute that's largely between the other two branches. Just quickly, Jay, what about when Sally Yates gets this subpoena? Because she was in that January 5th meeting where the decision to pursue General Flynn was made. And, Jay, when she testified before the House Intel Committee, guess whose firm represented her? John Gleason. So these conflicts are all over the place.
It's unprecedented what has happened here. In American history, it is unprecedented.
Absolutely. Remember, we're going to continue to answer your questions about this. We've got our great legal team experts here for you. 1-800-684-3110.
Jump ahead
To
a
call
little
in with
bit.
your questions. Just kind of, again, to set the stage here, we're talking about Mike Flynn's case. It was up before the D.C. Court of Appeals, federal court, on Friday. Full oral argument, which unusual to be granted this writ of mandamus, but the whole thing has been unusual. We're going to take your phone calls at 1-800-684-3110. I did want to start with this. It's interesting because it's a comment that came in, and I think we could bring in everybody in to kind of answer this. Gordy on Facebook wrote in, would Judge Sullivan's move make it so that any plea deal offered by Department of Justice becomes an immediate perjury trap? Dad, I'll start with you.
Well, the way that the judge has framed it, I think the answer to that could be yes. Because here, the government has basically confessed error. They've said it was wrong what took place here. There was, as Andy said, exculpatory evidence that was not put forward. There was other irregularities in the proceeding, and the plea should not have been entered into. It was basically like a coerced plea in a sense. And the government acknowledges and admits it and says the case should be dismissed. We agree with the judge, with the General Flynn. The judge should just sign the order. But he just will not, he cannot get himself to do it, and that's the problem here.
All right, Andy, what about you? I mean, this idea that, does it put in jeopardy plea deals because then a judge may just interpret that as somehow an immediate perjury trap?
Well, it does, Jordan. As a prosecutor, I have taken many pleas in cases, and the defendant has to say what he did, or the prosecutor has to say what the evidence is going to be, and that means that he's got to say, essentially confess to the crime that he's pleading to, either in his own words or via the proffer that's made by the prosecutor. Then suddenly we find this tremendous prosecutorial abuse, failure to disclose exculpatory information, failure to disclose information that might be impeaching to the defendant, which should nullify the plea. And the defendant says, well, now I just entered a plea, I admitted to all these things, it is a perjury trap. What does this do to plea negotiations going forward is really something that I want to know. I am at a loss as to why Judge Sullivan is making these forays into areas that he ought not to be involved in.
Yeah, let me go ahead
here, Jordan, which I just want to follow up on what Andy said really quickly here. And that is this. Judge Sullivan's acting as if there's never been a case in history where pleas have been withdrawn, Andy, and it happens all the time. A plea's entered into, and then they withdraw the plea. So this, and then you got the government agreeing, so this should be a non-case. Let's get Harry. Harry's joining us, Harry Hutchison, get his view on the situation as he sees it.
Well, I agree with the analysis put forward so far, and I think that the failure to dismiss in this particular case provides an incentive going forward for all defendants to decline to enter into plea deals, because once they do that, if Judge Sullivan's approach is allowed to stand, then they will set themselves up at least potentially for a perjury trap. And the case is even more egregious here. Why? Because the FBI had already concluded on January 4th that there was no derogatory information against General Flynn.
Folks, again, we've got a lot of calls, 1-800-684-3110, and longer segments so we can start taking more of those calls, playing more for you from the case. We're going to do that as well when we come back at 1-800-684-3110. If you've got questions, if you've got comments, this is the time to get them in.
That's kind of where we're at.
I got just 2 phone lines open for you
when it comes
right
to
now.
this
The rest
case.
are full.
It's far from done. Very unfortunate. Hopefully I'm wrong, that we are almost around the corner. Some miracle gets this judge to sign off. Who knows? Judges have been in way too long. On a different front, Supreme
The
Court.
Supreme Court on Monday sidestepped two hot-button issues by declining to take up cases involving Second Amendment rights and legal protections for police officers. The justices chose not to add new disputes over the right to carry a firearm in public and declined to revisit the legal doctrine of qualified immunity, which shields government employees from being held liable for alleged wrongdoing. The results mean fewer than 4 justices agreed to take up the cases. Justice Clarence Thomas dissented from the court's decision to deny the hearings. In dissenting from the denial of a new Second Amendment dispute, Thomas was joined by fellow conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
Well, it was way ahead of me. See, it seems like they're trying to keep it going till after the elections. You could be absolutely right. You could be absolutely right, David. Would it really surprise anybody? Seriously. They are trying everything but the kitchen sink. But I don't know what they're trying to accomplish by doing it. Because you can't... If the DOJ dismisses this case, it's the judge's duty basically to dismiss this case. Simple. But we don't know his motives. There's some sort of ulterior motive going on. Would it affect the elections? Probably, maybe, but doubtful. Because we have the riots, we have coronavirus dominating the news. Now we have the North-South Korea incident that should be creeping up very quickly. It's only a breaking story. Hopefully it will be defused. I don't think anybody is paying much attention when it comes there. Yeah, there's definitely something, and I smell a rat, a Democratic rat. It's the only answer. When you have all these things that are going on, probably very few people are paying attention to this, unfortunately. Hopefully it will be under control. Supreme Court on Monday sidesteps 2 hot-button issues declared, declining to take up cases next term involving Second Amendment rights, legal protection of police officers, for police officers. The justices chose not to add nearly a dozen new gun right disputes, including over the right to carry a firearm in public, and declined the opportunities to revisit a legal doctrine of qualified immunity, which generally shields government employees from being held liable for alleged wrongdoings. Let me close that real quick because I don't need that there. The results mean fewer than 4 justices agree to take up these cases next term, which begins in October. The Justice Clarence Thomas, one of the court's most conservative, dissent from the court's decisions to deny the reviews. He was joined by fellow conservative Kavanaugh and just Kavanaugh, in discussing from the denial of the new Second Amendment dispute. Earlier this term, the court avoided issuing a major ruling on a constitutionality of New York City handgun regulations, which the justices wrote in the unsigned opinion that the city repeal of the controversial restrictions regarding the legal challenge moot. But in a 31-page document, 3 conservative justices said the case should not have been dismissed. They extend consideration that the court's prior Second Amendment ruling were being appealed incorrectly by lower courts. The landmark in 2008, District of Columbia versus Heller, the court said that Second Amendment ensures the individual's rights to keep and bear arms for self-defense. The court decided 2 years later the right appeals that both the federal and state lowers. But in late Justice Scalia decision on the Heller case left a key question unanswered, but the scope of the Second Amendment and how courts should determine when these rights were infringed, leaving it lower courts to fill the gaps over the past decade. So that is obviously still in the air. When did they change to CHOP? I have no idea. I'm not even paying attention to them idiots. I think when it comes to Chaz, again, sonic weapons, microwave weapons, non-lethal, go in there, get rid of them. I personally have had enough. I'm sick of all of them. Start running up Antifa, because they are considered terrorists now, and throw them, their ass in prison, throw away the key. On a lighter note, I mean, I'm very direct with it anymore because I've gotten so tired of these guys. They just keep getting the attention, which I don't want to pay attention to them. This is what they want. But I am I'm working on something about Antifa, which is rare because it's really important. Now, the clip that I play during the intro with Hillary and Soros, that just says a lot right there. There's money laundering going on. I found this clip and I thought it was really interesting. It's about SpaceX.
SpaceX has some work to do before they're ready to send their Starship spacecraft to the moon. The rocket is being developed to send the first humans to Mars and could help create a permanent moon base. But the spacecraft may need some changes so it can safely land on the lunar surface. In response to questions on Twitter, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk said, quote, "We're working on new legs, wider stance, and able to auto-level, important for leaning into wind or landing on rocky and pitted surfaces." Musk also said the lunar Starship would have forward thrusters to stabilize the ship and that no heat shield flaps or gas thruster packs are needed if the idea is to get the max payload to the moon. He says they don't need to bring the first Starships back to Earth, and they can be, quote, "part of Moonbase Alpha." This comes after their fourth Starship prototype blew up during testing in May, so it seems they have a ways to go before the mission can get off the ground.
And that's all there was to that. It was really short. I thought it quite intriguing myself. So I will leave you with a little Mr. Rogers. Now, not what you think. Come on. In a minute. There we go.
So, I just have to ask, have you people completely lost your fucking minds? I mean,
there you go.
Is your thought process and all common sense,
Nathan,
is it completely destroyed, or are you just stupid? Are you stupid? A man is shot in Atlanta. And no need to wait for any facts to come out whatsoever. Let's just burn down a fucking Wendy's, protest, and cause absolute fucking chaos.
Wendy's.
Let's do that, okay? No need to find out any facts whatsoever, okay? Here's a fact, okay? Don't drive drunk. How about that? Don't pass out in your car from driving drunk. Don't resist arrest when the police try to put you in handcuffs. Don't fight with police. Ever. Under any circumstance, do not fight with police, okay? They're not the judge. If you didn't do anything wrong, let them arrest you and tell your story in front of a judge. It saves so much time. Don't run from the police, okay? Because you're just admitting guilt at this point. And honestly, if you're fighting the police, you're admitting guilt. You're literally creating your own goddamn stereotype. Don't aim a weapon of any kind, especially if you've stolen this weapon from a police officer. Don't point anything at a police officer. Have your parents explained anything about common sense to you whatsoever? At any point during this man's altercation, attempted arrest, he had every choice to not resist arrest. He had every choice not to steal a weapon, and he had every choice not to point it at the police. Are you people completely out of your fucking minds? Listen to me. Until there is a law that says a police officer cannot protect and serve, do what they say, okay? Police officers are there to protect and serve. If you resist arrest, if you fight them, if you steal their weapons, if you point weapons at a police officer, prepare for the worst, okay? Very simple. Let me give you very simple advice. If you are pulled over, be polite, okay? If you've done something wrong, or even if you haven't done something wrong and they attempt to arrest you, let them arrest you. Fighting them or resisting arrest will only escalate the situation. Okay? Number 3, wait to see a judge if you are arrested. Police are not the judge. The judge is the judge. Let them judge you. If you want to make things right, voice your opinion in a respectful way. This is not the answer. Stop resisting arrest!
Makes sense. But did they ever listen to Mr. Rogers? Probably not.
Hey guys,
Hold on.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and I'm here to formally endorse.
I hate when things run automatic. Here's Nancy.
Hey guys, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and I'm here to formally endorse United Spot.
Looks like she's still in quarantine.
So unless you live under a rock, then you have obviously seen United Spot videos, and you know that they do a pretty good job at impersonating me. But they're also not getting paid from YouTube because YouTube is not monetizing their videos, and it's a whole epidemic. All right, they're being censored. Everybody's being censored. But United Spot, they need your help. Because they want to continue making videos, but
they're pretty good.
Videos aren't that easy to make. And they cost money. So if you have extra money, laying around in your couch, or maybe some couch
Take some bottles back. Oh wait, we can do that now.
pizza that you want to donate, so these guys can continue to make videos, that would be wonderful. They got a PayPal account, I mean, it is Saturday, yesterday was Friday, and most people with a job get paid on Friday, and most of you people out there that are on unemployment, you guys got money, it's like, so why not help out United Spot, because they're doing a damn good job. Too much Jägermeister.
Too much Jägermeister. Alright. Well, I'm going to sign off now. Hope you enjoyed that. God bless you all. Remember to... Well, not a second. I got to get... Open the chest. God bless the President of the United States. God bless the Vice President military, doctors and nurses, law enforcement. Always be kind. Tell them on how much you appreciate them. They need to know that, especially in these times with all these douchebags running around. God bless all of them, including the Border Patrol and Coast Guard. God bless all of you. I do appreciate you all. Well, we couldn't get no lemons out to anybody right now, so save it for next time. So be kind to each other. If you see somebody who needs a hand, please give them a hand. Everybody needs that now and then. God bless you, and I will see you next time. This is the official show name. Do you want me on to? I'll get you on soon as I can. This is just a test run of the name. The show is not officially running. I'll get with you, Nathan. Yeah, definitely. You're coming on. If you want on, dude, you're good. So I haven't got everything set up. I'm just presenting. This is what will be from now on, and it will progress into a normal time where people can find it if you wish to view. I appreciate everybody outside the room and on D Live, Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, and Twitter. As long as I'm not blocked, you can see it. So God bless you all. I appreciate you. I will see you soon. Have a good night. Enjoy your work tomorrow or whatever you do. Make it a good day.